Hey community, in today's episode, the founder of PraiseCharts, Ryan Dahl, sits down with Matt McCoy to talk about 3 things he wished he knew when he started leading worship. Enjoy.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Loop Live. Glad to see you here. I'm your host, Matt McCoy, the founder of Loop Community, and today I'm going to be interviewing a very special friend of mine, Ryan Dahl. Ryan Dahl is the founder, the head, the chief innovator of PraiseCharts.com, an incredible resource that I'm sure your church has heard of and used, and if they haven't, you should definitely check them out and use them. You can find chord charts and orchestrations and tracks and basically every kind of worship resource you can think of for your worship ministry. So make sure you check out PraiseCharts.com. But I'm excited to talk to my friend Ryan today. We're going to talk about the 3 things that he's learned as a worship leader. He's been in the worship space for a long time, and so he's kind of seen it change over the years, and he's also, just has the experience under his belt. And so there's some things he's learned that we're going to dive into and talk about. So I'm looking forward to that. So if you guys have any questions at all too, make sure you comment on the video, and we can also feature some of those comments and ask questions live. So without further ado, here's Ryan Dahl. Ryan.
Hello, Matt.
Hey, man. So good to see you.
So cool to be on the other end of this. Normally I'm on your side, but it's nice to be interviewed. So
I know.
Good to be on your show.
So glad you're here, man. You and I go way back. You're a good friend of mine. We talk all things worship and life and business, and I've just always really appreciated just the honesty and transparency of our conversations. And so I thought it'd be cool to actually have you on this show to have a little bit of that kind of conversation, but with a bunch of people watching. So be careful what you say.
Sure.
But
I do have to be careful, Matt, because you are seriously one of my closest friends, is definitely in the United States. You're the guy I call on when I need to talk about life, things I'm excited about, things I'm frustrated about. So, we might be letting people into a very personal conversation here.
I know. We maybe should have have an audio delay on this so we could just pause. But anyway, so Ryan, you've been leading worship for a long time. How long have you been leading worship?
Oh, I think I would have started, when I was maybe 17 or 18. I'm 51 now. So I literally started when I learned the guitar. It was at a camp somewhere a couple hours away from here. They were all gathered around a fire. I borrowed a guitar, learned 3 chords, and everybody knows that's how you start leading worship. You just need to know 3 chords and have 6 strings and a pick, and you're good to go. So,
yeah, you're right. And
so
you got to just do it.
That's how it all started. Mm-hmm.
I forgot it at home. I was going to bring this record I found. I found this old vinyl, and I was going to hold it up right here and show it to everybody. But it's this old vinyl of a Maranatha record that I think was maybe one of the very first Maranatha records ever. And I was going to show that just to say that it's amazing how much the worship industry and worship has changed over the years. Obviously the technology has changed. We're not using records and vinyls anymore. But the songs have changed, the styles, the types of instruments that are used in worship. I remember when I first started leading worship in the early 2000s, or it was even in the late 90s, flute was kind of really popular and pretty normal to see in churches. And now you hardly ever see it.
Flute, saxophone, all those different instruments. You want to know a little secret, though, is just literally last week, I was browsing through Spotify and I stumbled upon some old Maranatha Praise Band collections they're all this old music is in Spotify. And it started making my heart just murmur a little bit because it brings back the good old days. So I sent to my publishing manager, I'm like, clear all these songs and assign them to me, and I will chord chart them because I know the songs. Yeah. And so I've got right now 70 songs assigned to me that are old Paul Baloche and old early Integrity Maranatha stuff.
Bringing you back.
Praise Band. And I'll tell you something is we might think it's old, but a lot of people are still singing those songs because they're like classics. They're like the modern hymns of our era. So
it's interesting because some of those songs are my favorite songs ever. I play guitar every night. I play guitar and sing my 2.5-year-old daughter to sleep, and I love it because it's this one moment in my day when I just get to worship on my own and just play this like old nylon guitar. And I'll tell you, 80% of the songs I sing to her are these old Maranatha songs, like Spirit Song and Blessed Be the Name of the Lord God Almighty. And
love it. Well, you know that song, there's this Maverick City song that just came out called Old Church Basement. Maybe you've heard about it. Do you know the song?
Yeah.
And it actually refers to, it sort of tells the story of the good old days. There's lines in it like, you know, remember the days when no one was trying to get famous, no one was trying to get signed. We were all just a bunch of, you know, different cultures all meeting in a basement with the overhead projector.
Yeah.
That's how I totally grew up. And it was a day of innocence, and I think we're attracted to that. So
yeah, totally. So share with us some of your wisdom, because you've seen it change over the years, and I think you've done it for so long that you've got some little gold nuggets, I think, to share with us today of like, what are the 3 things that you've learned as a worship leader?
Okay, well, we'll just kind of start with one. And it's interesting, this whole conversation we've just been having is a perfect segue into the thing I feel most passionate about in worship leading. So currently, when I am leading worship, I'm not leading with lights and stage and all of that. I'm not a worship leader on a church staff or anything like that right now. My most common worship leading experiences are actually in front of about 20 women who are part of a shelter. They've either been through abuse or drug addiction or things like that. So there's an organization that I'm a part of, and they regularly have me come and lead worship. So that's kind of one of the contexts. But the way I experience worship in that context is a way that I want to somehow convey that heart and that experience so that it's relevant in any kind of environment. Whether you're in front of 20 people with no microphone or one microphone, or you're on stage in front of hundreds. The thing that I really try to convey in that environment is like an authentic expression of myself. So I come with songs that I've, prepared and that I know. But there's kind of also a sense of these girls don't just need me singing a bunch of popular songs. They need to, just even thinking about that experience where these girls have been abused by men, perhaps, and I'm a man leading worship to them, or maybe they've gotten into, a bad kind of social environment or whatever their story is. And I just thinking like, I need to not hide behind some popular song, some track, some, lights, whatever, all of the stuff that can kind of, the stage, all of these sort of artifacts that stand in between who I am as a person and who I'm leading. So that's really like the heartbeat of the story that I feel passionate about is that when you're called to be a worship leader, we're not just a conveyor of, a song. Like we're still a person in that experience. And we have a story. We have a heart. There's an authentic, perhaps even broken part of us that needs to kind of shine through, because that's how people connect. That's how their walls get broken down. And I've kind of experienced that where I go in and I'm not quite sure what to expect, but I start to let some of my guard down in front of them. And then together we have this experience where after a half an hour, it feels like, wow, the Lord just came and met all of us. And it wasn't like this top down Ryan, leading worship or kind of thing. So anyways, just a couple of points that I want to sort of bring out about that. And this gets very, very practical. My first point, and I've written them down. So if I'm looking off screen, I'm referring to things that I've thought about. But taking time to think about your first 30 seconds when you come on worship. This is one of my pet peeves. And let's talk about this a bit, Matt. Maybe you experience this well, but I feel a little bit nauseous when I see a worship leader come on and it's just like, hey, everybody, welcome to church. let's worship. And then boom, the band starts and it's like, what? Like, I don't even know who you are or what just happened. Suddenly within 7 seconds, the lights came on, the countdown finished, and we're just driving. And
yeah,
I don't know. It's like, it's alarming. And maybe sometimes that's the appropriate thing to do. But I kind of ask, where was the chance for me to, I don't know, just engage with that person who's singing that song? Who is that person? Yeah. That's a question that I'm asking. What do you think about that?
It's kind of laziness almost, I think, because I think we can get stuck in a rut where you you spend your whole week planning the worship set. And I think that first 30 seconds or 20 seconds at the beginning of a set, you typically don't spend much time during the week planning that. And we kind of overlook that. And that probably is one of the most important parts, like the welcome, like the setting the tone of like, who are we and what are we here to do? And
let's get really practical. Just what this could look like is, first of all, spending time preparing and thinking about what you want to say. So you're saying something meaningful and maybe a bit, personal, or at least reflecting of who you are. So it seems authentic, or it is authentic. And then telling your band, okay, listen, I'm going to come out and we're going to just start on the 1-4-5 or just the 1-4 back and forth. Just create a little space. We're not going to start the track yet. And I'm just going to look at people and give me a few moments just to breathe and create that sense of, I am really here. I'm not just a conveyor of the top 40 song list, of our church or something. Like, I am a person. I am your worship leader, your worship pastor. Sometimes I have, shared just a quick little story or a quick little, I don't know, sometimes it's a bit funny, sometimes it's a bit personal. It's all based on the context, but I want to be a person, right? I'm not just a song singer. So
and we can kind of forget that people, we don't know their stories. They maybe had a very stressful time getting their kids ready, loading them into the car, spilling coffee on their shirt, kids screaming in the back, whatever, running into church, getting their kids checked in. I mean, it's a chaotic thing. And then they finally walk into the auditorium, countdown's going down, And I do think that there does need to be some space. Like, space really does just kind of lets things settle, lets people calm down, and kind of just refocus of like, okay, what are we doing? But you're right. Those first 20 seconds of the worship set are so important, and we don't spend time planning it, and we should plan it.
Matt. Yeah, imagine this. What if you, as a worship leader, had that chaotic experience coming to church with your wife? Kids were all crazy or whatever. But what if you revealed that? Yeah. I mean, what would that do if someone was being led by a guy who was like, oh my goodness, he just let me in. I just had that experience and I felt terrible. I felt like a terrible mom. And now my worship leader, I just getting shivers in my spirit right now, just as I'm sharing that with you. Like, what would that do if you started to just peel back the guard and let people know that, you're on the same stage? Even the physicality, some of us were 6 feet up on this stage. There's so many physical separations of, I am under the spotlight, I'm on a stage, I'm behind a microphone. It's just like, we got so many barriers to break through to somehow convey, I'm on the same stage as you, and we are together worshiping. And it's the first 30 seconds, and there's no template for it. It's like, who are you? How are you going to cut through that? So,
and I've found that if you do it right in the beginning, it changes the whole dynamic of whether it's going to be a spectator situation where people just watch the worship, or whether they're really joining into worship with you. And I feel like when you kind of relate to them as like a real person, they're much more willing to then just follow you and go with you into the worship set instead of just watching you.
And people don't want to see that you've got it all together. Somehow, if you can even leak out that like I don't have it all together. And that who is that person? I can't remember her name. The vulnerability, she
Brene
speaks,
Brown.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole vulnerability thing, I think is important. And you don't want to overdo it, or you don't want to use it, but you want to be authentic. I just feel like
it is vulnerability. Important. There is something sometimes charming about self-deprecating, but not like self-deprecating, like bringing too much attention to yourself. But I think it may be more of is just vulnerability, being like, hey, I'm a human. Yeah. It does look like I'm up here like a rock star on stage, but I'm just like you. And that's good, Ryan. I've had
experiences where I've shared once shared a story about I was cutting my lawn and dealing with the weeds, and I don't know, I made some relationship of that to worship, or I just try to sort of convey like I'm like you. I live a life, a normal life. I have stresses. I'm on the same platform. It's not me to you. It's us to God. And we just need to take time to think about how we can shift the atmosphere so that people don't like idolize the worship leader. Because this can happen especially in our generation. Like in the 90s, it was just 3 chords and a guitar and a songbook, right? But today we've got to battle through the production, which is great and awesome. But let's be intentional about breaking through with things that can't be produced, the authentic self. So,
being intentional, knowing like who's in your audience, and maybe realizing that they may not be like completely ready to jump right into a worship set because you said, "Hey, everybody, stand up, let's sing." Mm-hmm. Right. I've actually found it's good too, just to like maybe even just be like, hey, this morning, not sure where you're at, but let's just like close our eyes, maybe put your hands out, and let's just pray together. Like, God, we're here to worship you this morning, and we're coming off of highs and lows, some of us, help us just to focus on you. And I think that helps then get everybody on like a level, like playing field of like, okay, now we're ready to worship. Can't make assumptions.
There with you, Matt. That's exactly it. So my second point, which I realize we've kind of already talked about, but the first was about the first 30 seconds, and then the second was just don't be afraid to show your human side and being a person, not just being a song leader. It's very important to me to think of yourself like a worship leader is a life leader. So you gotta find ways to like let your life leak through. We're not just musicians. We're not just groove makers. We're not just track followers. We're life leaders. So,
do you think that mainly is coming across by the things you say on stage? Or do you mean even outside of like when you're not on the stage?
Yeah, it's almost like we have to approach the stage as a consummation of who I am as a person. So it can't be all about the 20 minutes because we do have certain songs to lead and there's only so much time, and I can't make it a big, personal, like exploratory time. But just thinking of ourselves as life leaders, because in Scripture when it talks about worship, the real worship is our lives, right? It's not the songs we sing, it's the life that we live after the song that we sing. That's the real worship that God's looking for. So just need to kind of keep reminding ourselves that if I'm a worship leader, it's a life leader, and then it's how do these songs reflect and express life things. So it's like a mindset, that I think is really important to have. So
that is really good. What else you got?
Okay, well, the third one is again, this is related to the whole life thing, is thinking about what's actually going to make a difference in someone's life after all the songs are sung, after all the chords are wrapped at the end of the service. It's trying to like this is something I try to intentionally think about as I'm leading worship. Sometimes at the end, I'll get into a song where I can kind of loop through a few chords, and even I can kind of think about, what have we just gone through? What are the songs we just sung? And what is a morsel that I can just re-emphasize and have people hold on to? So I'll give you like a real practical example is, there's that song. What's the Cody Carnes song? I just
Nothing
lost
Else?
the name of the song. No, not Nothing Else. It's the other
Run to the
one.
Father?
No.
Is that him? I don't even know.
We're gonna play a game here. It's help me, Matt. Someone around me.
Get your instrument. How does it go?
In Christ, the Christ song. I'm gonna have to look it up because this is very important.
Christ.
It's Cody Carnes. It's his biggest song, Matt. We should know this.
Christ.
I'm gonna have
to.
Christ be magnified.
Oh, Christ.
Matt. You should know this. I should know this. Okay. Anyways, the point being, and it's just when I get nervous, if I'm online or whatever, I lose my memory. So I know the song, but that phrase, Christ, Christ be magnified, Christ be magnified. I just kind of felt like that could be a phrase that the girls that I was leading in that particular circumstance, they could say that phrase throughout the day, and it would be like a way of carrying the 20-minute or 30-minute time of worship I had with them, and trying to make it meaningful after the worship was done. So the whole main point of this is, and this is it's all really like mindset. I don't have formulas for this. It's more like how you think about, is the worship time this 30 minutes, or is the worship time how this 30 minutes catapults into the life we live afterwards? And what are the phrases that people are going to remember? What will they be singing on Monday or Tuesday during lunch or doing coffee hour? And I literally made this explicit, just in a conversational way as I was leading worship. And I just said that song, Christ be magnified. Like, you can take those 3 or 4 words and they can impact the rest of this day or the rest of this week. If you say that, imagine like the Christ is hearing you say that inner cry, that inner prayer. So a lot of the songs that we sing have morsels of truth in them that the power of them is when they get recreated and repeated throughout the week. And the reason for the melodies that are so catchy is so that we will replay them in our lives through the rest of the week. That's why it's not so that we can just have this emotive experience for 20 minutes. The reason why we need hooks and melodies and kind of an emotional experience, it's like it burns an impression on us that reverberates through the week. Do you see that kind of mindset that I'm trying to convey? And if us as worship leaders can go into it thinking about that, like, what's going to last past this 20 minutes? I mean, if enough pastors would even remember that when they preach, to think, what is anybody going to remember in 5 days? Probably 1 or 2 lines, maybe if that. So if I was ever preaching, and I haven't done a lot of preaching, but I would be like, that's all that really matters, is what this all has to convey down into something that can be remembered and have an actual life impact. So
that's so good.
Worship
man.
is like that too. Is I just think of songs as offering up these kind of morsels, these phrases that are packed with truth, that are life impacting, and are meant for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So yeah.
And that really is the difference between pastoring and worship versus just seeing yourself as a song leader. And I think a lot of worship leaders can easily just get into this, like, hey, I put this set list together like a Spotify playlist, basically, and you press play and it goes through.
Yeah.
And that actually is pretty easy. It doesn't require a lot of intellectual like skill, I think, to do that. But it's those little pastoral moments in between the songs, after the set, before the set, that I think are what really drive it home and make something memorable, a week later. And keeping that message very simple, like it's kind of just like any great marketing campaign, really. Like the way that you get someone to remember something is you don't give them like a whole paragraph of text and have them memorize that. You give them a little slogan, a little just simple thing that you want them to remember.
Enough.
And if you just pounded that home, like if we use the "Oh Christ Be Magnified" example, if you just pounded that home throughout your entire worship set, maybe you intentionally picked songs that actually all kind of have that theme to it, and then maybe in between each song or something, like you do something that is like you're coaching them, you're pastoring people into that, like "Christ be magnified," repeat that, God in my life, Christ be magnified, in my work, be magnified.
I have, I've gone to church with my kids, and one of my sons, who's like an older teenager. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, where you look at your teenager standing in church, and it's like the blank face while worship is going on, and going, "Oh man, it's like, is anything breaking through or cutting through?" But I want to tell you, this is that same son at 2:00 in the afternoon was down at the piano in my basement playing and singing the songs that went on Sunday morning, and then continued through the, like, all he ever wants to do is play worship songs, at the piano. But so I just kind of say that as an encouragement to go, sometimes the impact that we have as worship leaders isn't actually in the moment, in the 20 minutes of the service. It's the ripple that plays out after, and I definitely experienced that, just seeing, so that's really,
it takes planning.
Really important perspective.
It really does take planning. And I would say, like, if you're spending an hour picking your songs, you should spend twice that amount picking and writing out what you're actually going to say and what the message is you're trying to drive home.
Right, thinking that through.
Not everybody is really, really great at, like, just like, hey, I'm going to get up on stage and just say whatever's coming to my mind and it's going to be impactful. Not everybody has that skill. I know that I would need to, like, get up. I know I would need to actually write it out. Like, what am I going to say? Like, what's like an intentional, like, verse we can read together, or like some sort of like congregational response thing we could do together, or that would make it meaningful.
There's that element. But Matt, there's also an element of just reorienting how you see yourself as a worship leader, so that you can be a real and present person in front of people. And so, you can plan a scripture, and that can be important too. But it's also important that it's like you reframe who I am as a worship leader, and then you're listening and you're present. It's like this conversation that you and I are having. I didn't rehearse all of the words. I'm having a conversation with you because of how I've oriented myself towards you, and I decided that I wanted to speak passionately about some of these things with you. And then out of that, this real conversation is unfolding, right? Like, we're connecting here. So that kind of orientation is important. It's like a mindset shift, because it's almost like if you're too prepared, kind of technically,
it's
then
scripted.
It doesn't come across quite the same, too scripted. So it's that balance. I'm certainly saying be prepared, but also orienting ourself and
so how does a worship leader how does a worship leader begin to do that? And, I think of someone like Paul Balash, who's really, really good at this. What you're saying, Paul is like a master at.
Exactly. I would
how does a worship leader learn that?
I've been impacted. Well, I would say one is exactly what you just did by identifying Paul Balash. Like, I watch him, I listen to him, I observe him. I've sat under his worship leading, and I've thought to myself, I want to be like that. I want to be real and authentic.
Very real.
It like pours into my spirit, I mean, not everybody can do this, but for me, even personally, I've become a friend of Paul because I really like him. I want him to sort of pour into my spirit, but you don't have to. Not everyone can become his friend, but you got to find people that you admire and watch and observe and like soak it in. It's not going to be, I'm going to find a book and figure out this perfect thing to say or something like that. It's got to go deeper into our spirit. So that word nuance, there's nuance to it that
would you say almost hard. Yeah. It's almost coming down to like, you have to be careful then who you're copying. We had Jason Houtsma on here last week, and we were talking about how do you get better at your instrument, and he was just saying like, you find someone who's really good at their instrument and copy what they're doing. I think maybe some of the problems is that worship leaders who have this mindset that are very much like performance oriented, they're copying worship leaders that are performance oriented, and maybe they're not looking for like the Paul Balashes and copying that. Yeah,
copying that, or just admiring that Paul is being authentic as an expression of himself, and I want to be an authentic expression of myself. So who am I? Like, what happened to me this week? How did I feel this week? What was I thinking about? What was I doing? What are some normal things that I can maybe express that would help break down some barriers?
Yeah.
And then how is that appropriate? Am I leading 15 people in a living room, or am I leading 1,000 people on a big stage? It's different. There's so many different variances, but
it's not copying. I hate the word copying. It's more of like inspiration. It's who's inspiring you, who is influencing you to become your better self.
Yep.
As a worship leader.
Yep.
Ryan, that's good, man.
And I wanted to say this, Matt, is I think it's good that you and I are having this conversation, because talk about making it easy for people, almost too easy, is you and I are the culprits of that. Like, I make the charts, you make the tracks, people can press play, print, and boom. So, that's why I like to back that up with a conversation like this and go, here, we're living off of creating these resources that are meant to make life so easy for worship leaders. And yet part of maybe my mission, my message is, because that is easy, now you could take a little extra time to think, to contemplate, rest. You don't have to go in to Sunday morning just blazing, papers flying everywhere, and the tracks are wrong or whatever. Like, all those things can be in place so that you can pastor people, shepherd people, be a person. I can't sell you a chart that will convey who you are as a person. You can't put that on a track. It is not quantifiable. All I can do is encourage you to be that person. And I believe that the transforming power of worship leading is it's like a divine kind of human connection, right? God wants to use our story, ourselves, who we are. He's not looking for some, perfectly polished person. All that does is it creates this gap, this space, this hard to identify. And I'm telling you, I go to church sometimes with my kids, and we'll come home and have lunch, and the kids are like, oh, I just could not relate to that worship leader. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I'm just saying it comes across if you don't look authentic, right? So that impacts people.
What is it that they usually don't relate to?
It's like I think it could be just Maybe it's just the delivering of the song. They're just song singers, right? Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to define that.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's so subtle. It's so subtle. And people are going to be listening to us be so frustrated. They're like, here they are talking about all this, but they're not giving me anything. I want 3 points to solve this. You got to want it. You got to want to be an authentic person. That's where it starts. Is if you don't want it, if you just want to impress whatever, the church, if you want to be like the latest rock star, then you'll be that. But if you want that authentic connection with people,
you have to want it, and you can't just buy it and download it. Like it really is. And maybe there's times when maybe you should just pause the tracks, stop the tracks, maybe go off chart, go off script. Right. I do like that. Oh, yeah. That was definitely challenging to me of like, maybe you don't have to script out everything. Because that is the authenticity part of it.
Right.
So.
Yep. Yeah. Really good.
Ryan, this has been a good conversation. Thanks for joining us, man.
I hope so. I feel like I've kind of scrambled around and wandered with some thoughts, and I don't have everything. I'm kind of at a place in my life where I'm more comfortable with some of the angst and less clear answers. It's just maybe a season of life that I'm in. I don't want to give simple, like honestly, my big pet peeve is 3-point sermons that all start with the letter C. I'm like, life is not that simple. Life is complex. It's rich. It's deep. It's
right.
So let's wrestle together like you and I have here. And
you got to be able to just have the conversation. Mm-hmm. And be okay with some of the tension of like, we got to figure it out. We're all doing our best. And there's not an easy answer for any of it. But it does come down to like a heart, just like desire. Like you have to want to be authentic. Want to be known.
Yeah. Right.
Want to be
want to be known. That's great. Yeah.
Want to be a good pastor and not just a song leader.
Yeah.
And we all want to be great musicians and great singers and musicians.
Yeah.
But there's got to be something a little deeper than that, right?
Yeah. You got to want the other as well. You got to want the thing that you can't download and then you can't get from a website or, or anywhere.
Hey, if one of us can start a website that sells that.
No, I don't want any part of it. Other than let's have conversations like this that are free. Yeah. Just come and listen to two guys chatting together, trying to pursue a little bit more of an authentic expression and encourage people that way. So that's what we're about.
All right, Ryan. Good to see you, man.
Okay. Good. You're a good friend. Appreciate you a lot and all you do at Loop Community. We celebrate all that you guys are doing. And I feel like it's so great how we can partner together and cooperate and fan each other's flame. I feel like we're kind of redefining how even this resourcing can be done. We team up, worship innovators. We got 12 other guys and gals. We're all on team with each other.
I was thinking the other day about the dinner we did together.
Yeah, right.
Down in South Carolina, wherever that was. Yeah, it was just yesterday that came to my mind. I thought that was so cool that we could do that together. Bringing people from the industry together and co-hosting it.
Right.
Special.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, Ryan, make sure you guys check out PraiseCharts.com. If you have not done that, that is where you go to get amazing chord charts, orchestrations, tracks, maybe.
Go to Loop Community for tracks. We're good for that. We're good for that. But there's a lot of stuff you cannot download at PraiseCharts. So, and that's the important stuff.
Right. Thanks, man. Love you, man.
Okay. Love you too. See you then. Bye.
All right. What an awesome conversation with Ryan. Man, I just love talking with him. That is a little snippet of what even my phone calls with Ryan are kind of like when I'm walking home from the train or something and we're talking about life. That's a little bit like it is. And so it's kind of fun to be able to do that with a live audience And make sure you guys check out PraiseCharts.com. Really great resources there. And hopefully this talk was encouraging or inspiring to you. You know, I know there weren't like a lot of straight up answers, but that's okay. We're just talking about the struggles and the things that worship leaders face, and we're really trying to bring some fresh content to you guys in these Loop Live shows. So we've got a bunch of really great interviews lined up for the rest of the summer. They're going to be on our podcast, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere you can imagine, and it's going to be great. If you guys have any suggestions, any comments, if you want to just write down, maybe just write down in the comments now, like what's one thing from this talk that you walked away with? What's one thing that you learned or you felt inspired by? Write down in the comments what you thought. It would mean a lot to us. And we'll see you at the next Loop Live. This is Matt. Thanks for listening. Hey, let us know what's the main thing you learned from today's talk. Write it down in the comments. Send us a DM. We hope to hear from you soon.